An insane coronavirus experiment has been leaked. The US softens its tone on China, and China's business crackdowns continue. That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Daily Peanut. The news can be a tough pill to swallow. That's why Daily Peanut gives you a daily dose of news in equal parts humor and substance. So, have you ever thought to yourself, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could genetically engineer a virus that's super contagious to humans and then release it in the wild? Well, that's what scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology wanted to do. We know this from a leaked document, a 2018 proposal submitted to the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, which always makes me think of Metal Gear. The documents were leaked to a group called Drastic Research, which has made a lot of the breakthroughs in investigating the Wuhan lab leak hypothesis. Drastic has released the leak proposal online. According to the proposal, scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology were planning to genetically enhance airborne coronaviruses and release aerosols containing novel chimeric spike proteins among cave bats in Yunnan, China. Now, for some reason, DARPA rejected the funding proposal. Too busy working on the perfect super soldier, I guess. Actually, the real reason they rejected the funding proposal is even more concerning than that. According to Drastic, DARPA believed the proposal potentially involved gain-of-function research that would potentially make it more dangerous to humans by inserting spike proteins that bind to human cells into the coronaviruses. Is this all sounding familiar? DARPA was also concerned this was a dual-use research of concern. According to the National Institutes of Health, that's research that could be directly misapplied to pose a significant threat with broad potential consequences to public health and safety, agricultural crops, and other plants, animals, the environment, materiel, or national security. But the Wuhan Institute of Virology's proposal didn't acknowledge or address either of those issues. In fact, it claimed those concerns didn't apply. Instead, it asked DARPA for $14 million. Some of which would pay the salaries of Wuhan Institute Virology scientists like Dr. Shizheng Li. Now you might be wondering, even before the pandemic, why would anyone think altering a coronavirus to be more contagious to humans and releasing it into the wild was a good idea? The purpose of the research was to assess the risk of coronaviruses, work on ways to prevent outbreaks, and even vaccinate bats against the virus, according to the proposal. Well, in a sense, we're in the middle of a fantastic experiment assessing the risks of coronaviruses. And didn't even need U.S. funding. Oh wait. Now that funding was given to a group called EcoHealth Alliance, led by Dr. Peter Daszak. He was the one who gave it to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. He was also one of the earliest voices calling the lab leak hypothesis a conspiracy theory. By the way, this insane experiment DARPA rejected, it was also spearheaded by Dr. Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance. But never mind all that, because the state-run Chinese Academy of Sciences has released a new paper claiming that the coronavirus was in the U.S. much earlier than previously thought. Researchers said they are 50% confident that the first COVID-19 case in the U.S. emerged between August and October 2019. And the earliest possible case was on April 26, 2019 in Rhode Island. So, to recap, a leaked proposal shows that in 2018, the Wuhan Institute of Virology was planning to do experiments to create exactly the type of unusually contagious to humans coronavirus that caused the COVID-19 pandemic. And then, the Chinese regime suddenly releases a study claiming the coronavirus possibly came from Rhode Island in April instead. Sounds legit. But if you're upset by all this, don't worry, because at least China's doing something good for the environment. Maybe. More after the break. Welcome back. Speaking of all the ways China is improving our health, they've vowed to stop building coal plants in developing nations. Here's Chinese leader Xi Jinping giving a speech at the UN.
China will step up support for other developing countries in developing green and low-carbon energy and will not build new coal-fired power projects abroad.
And it seems there's a lot of money on the line.
The announcement at the UN General Assembly could affect 44 coal plants earmarked for Chinese state financing, totaling $50 billion, according to Global Energy Monitor, a US think tank.
Wow, China is doing what's right for the environment even when it costs them money. You know, it reminds me of when China promised to cut back on building coal plants in China and then broke that promise. Which of course reminds me of all the other promises the Chinese Communist Party has broken.
Beijing is the largest source of financing for coal power plants globally, and Xi's announcement will have a far-reaching impact on coal power expansion plans in countries like Bangladesh, Indonesia, Vietnam, and South Africa. However, Xi's carefully worded statement revealed few details and left room for existing projects to continue.
How about that? Viewers of China Uncensored know you should never trust the Chinese Communist Party's promises because they are lies. Unfortunately, U.S. climate envoy John Kerry doesn't seem to watch China Uncensored. Human rights activists are increasingly worried the U.S. is caving on human rights to get China to cooperate on climate change. Uyghur and human rights advocates say they believe administration officials are softening their tone on social media and in other public comments on China and human rights. There are also rumors that John Kerry had a forceful debate with other Biden administration officials about China's human rights versus climate issues, as well as claims the Biden administration is stalling a bipartisan bill on Uyghur forced labor. To be fair, these are anonymous claims, so we don't know if they're true. But this is exactly what the Chinese Communist Party is aiming for. They're purposefully using climate change to trick the U.S. into backing off on human rights and other critical issues. This is why I did an entire episode called "Don't Fall for China's Climate Change Trap." Can someone please share it with John Kerry? The Communist Party continues to go after Jack Ma and his company, Ant Group. Ant says it will join the government-run social credit system and hand over all user data to the government. And this is really a big deal. According to the New York Times, Ant Group challenged China's state-dominated banking system by bringing easy-to-use payments, borrowing, and investing to hundreds of millions of smartphones across the country. In other words, all those people had access to financial services outside the direct control of the Communist Party and big Chinese state-owned banks. Or at least they did. And after the break, China is placing even more restrictions on what kids are allowed to do. Welcome back. Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, has put caps on screen time for Chinese youths. The new rule is for users under 14. Just 40 minutes a day between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. This follows a state-mandated cap on video games. This leaves China's youth with plenty more time for homework, like studying Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. Wouldn't want China's youth wasting time on worthless things, right? But speaking of companies kneeling before the Chinese Communist Party, Zoom. You see, Zoom wants to buy Five9, an American customer service software company. And that deal is under U.S. government review because of Zoom's China ties. According to the Federal Communications Commission, they want to see if the deal poses a risk to the national security or law enforcement interests. Zoom has some shady dealings with the Chinese regime. The Justice Department last year charged one of its China-based executives with conspiring to disrupt video conference commemorations of the Tiananmen Square democracy protests. Zoom is also facing multiple ongoing federal investigations related to its dealings with Beijing. And the U.S. federal government takes Chinese national security threats seriously. except for the federal agencies caught buying Chinese drones that are a national security threat. Meanwhile, Lithuania continues to show how it's done. Its defense ministry just advised everyone to throw away their Chinese phones because they have built-in censorship features. This is the latest move by Lithuania against the Chinese Communist Party. China stopped trade with Lithuania after it strengthened its ties with Taiwan. Lithuania responded by donating more COVID-19 vaccines to Taiwan. Baller. And speaking of Taiwan, Taiwan just announced a new $9 billion boost to its military budget in response to the severe threat from China. This is great news. And China celebrated with a fun military jet flyover of Taiwan's air defense zone. And this episode is sponsored by Daily Peanut. If you like interesting daily news updates, and since you're still here, I assume you do, check out Daily Peanut. It's a bunch of fast, timely news stories selected for you and available to read on your phone, tablet, or computer. Reading Daily Peanut is an easy way to filter out the noise and learn more about the world news that matters. Join more than 250,000 other readers. It's education and entertainment delivered right to your inbox every morning. And the best part is, it's free. So sign up for Daily Peanut now. Use the link in the description below. I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.